The stars looked cold and distant from the observation deck of the Corythian warship. Commander Vexillar stood with his forearms crossed behind his back, watching the small blue planet spinning slowly in the darkness of space. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his 4 yellow eyes never blinked as he studied the world below. The Corythians were warriors. They had always been warriors. For 10,000 years, they had traveled across the galaxy, conquering every species they encountered. They stood 7 feet tall, covered in thick scales that could stop most blades. Their claws could tear through metal. Their teeth could crush bone. In the known galaxy, there was no species more feared than the Corythians. Vexillar had personally led the conquest of 3 star systems. He had fought in over 200 battles and had never known defeat. His body carried the scars of countless victories. To the Corythian people, he was a living legend. But today, he was not here to conquer. The Galactic Council had given him a different mission. A new species had developed faster than light travel. They called themselves humans, and they came from this small blue world called Earth. The Council wanted to know if these humans were dangerous before making official contact. "Report," Vexillar said, his deep voice echoing across the silent bridge. His intelligence officer, Tarek Sol, stepped forward. Tarek Sol was younger than the commander. With lighter scales and a quick mind for analysis, he had been studying the human broadcasts for 3 full cycles now. "Commander, I have completed my initial assessment of the human species," Tarek Sol said. He pressed a button, and a holographic image of a human appeared in the center of the bridge. This is what they look like. Every warrior on the bridge leaned forward to study the image. What they saw confused them. The creature was small, barely reaching 6 feet at its tallest. It had no scales, no armor of any kind. Its skin was soft and thin, easily damaged. It had no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons whatsoever. Its eyes were small and forward-facing. It had no tail for balance, no extra limbs for combat. "This is a joke," said General Mokhtar, the oldest warrior on the ship. His scales had turned gray with age, but his forearms were still thick with muscle. "This creature is prey, nothing more." "I thought the same thing at first," Tarek Sol admitted. "By every biological measure, humans are weak. They have no natural defenses. They require sleep for 8 hours every day. Their bodies cannot regulate temperature well. They must constantly eat and drink to survive. A single Corythian warrior could kill dozens of them without effort." "Then why are we here?" asked Sylveth, a young female warrior who had recently joined the crew. Her scales were still bright blue, not yet darkened by years of combat. "If they are so weak, why does the Council care about them?" "Because they are strange," Tarek Sol said. He changed the holographic display to show the planet Earth. "This world is more dangerous than any we have encountered. 70% of the surface is covered in water they cannot breathe. The land contains thousands of predators with claws and fangs and venom. The weather patterns include storms that can destroy entire cities. And yet, somehow, these fragile creatures became the dominant species." Vexillar narrowed his 4 eyes. "How?" "I am still trying to understand that, Commander. They have no single advantage. They are not the strongest, fastest, or toughest creatures on their world, but they survived when stronger species did not. They built civilizations while other creatures remained animals. There is something about them that does not fit the normal patterns." The commander walked closer to the holographic display. He studied the human image carefully. The creature looked back at him with its small, strange eyes. There was something in those eyes that Vexillar did not like. Something he could not name. "What do we know about their behavior?" he asked. Tarek Sol pulled up more data. "They are social creatures. They live in large groups and form strong bonds with each other. They have developed complex languages, art, music, and technology. In many ways, they are similar to us." "Similar to us?" Mokhtar laughed, a harsh sound like rocks grinding together. "They are nothing like us. We are warriors. These creatures look like they would run from their own shadows. That is what I believed as well, Terexol said quietly. Until I found their entertainment broadcasts. The bridge fell silent. Entertainment was not a concept the Corithians understood well. They had songs of battle and stories of conquest. But the idea of doing something purely for enjoyment was foreign to them. Show me, Vexillar commanded. Terexol hesitated. In all his years of service, the commander had never seen his intelligence officer hesitate before. It was a small thing. Just a moment of pause, but Vexillar noticed it. I must warn you, Commander. What I am about to show you is disturbing. I have watched it many times, and I still do not fully understand what I am seeing. Show me, Vexillar repeated. Terexol pressed another button. The holographic display changed to show a large arena filled with thousands of screaming humans. In the center of the arena was a cage made of metal fencing. Inside the cage stood two human males, wearing almost no clothing. Their hands were wrapped in thin gloves. Their bodies glistened with sweat. What is this? Sylveth asked. The humans call it the Ultimate Fighting Championship, Terexol explained. It is one of their most popular forms of entertainment. Two humans enter this cage and fight each other until one cannot continue. A duel to the death? Mokhtar asked, suddenly interested. Corithians understood duels. They were an honorable way to settle disputes. No, Terexol said. Not to the death. They do this for points, for money, for fame. They do this because they enjoy it. A bell rang in the recording, and the two humans moved toward each other. What happened next would change everything the Corithians believed about the galaxy. The humans began to fight. Vexillar watched as the two creatures attacked each other with a ferocity he had never seen outside of actual warfare. They punched and kicked and threw each other to the ground. Blood appeared on their faces within seconds. The sound of flesh striking flesh echoed through the bridge speakers, and the crowd cheered. They cheered as if they were watching something wonderful. As if this violence was a celebration. Vexillar felt something cold settle in his stomach. It was a feeling he had not experienced in over 50 years of combat. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was fear. The bridge of the Corithian warship had never been so silent. Every warrior stood frozen in place, their four eyes locked on the holographic display. Even General Mokhtar, who had fought in more battles than anyone could count, had stopped breathing. On the screen, the two humans continued their brutal dance. The first human was called Danny Ortiz, according to the text at the bottom of the broadcast. He was shorter than the other fighter but built like a solid block of muscle. His skin was covered in colorful markings that the humans called tattoos. His eyes were focused and cold, like a predator watching its prey. The second human was Jake Cooper. He was taller, with longer arms and legs. His body was lean but powerful. A old scar ran across his eyebrow. Proof that this was not his first fight. Danny threw a punch that connected with Jake's jaw. The sound was loud and sharp, like a rock hitting wet meat. Jake's head snapped to the side, and blood flew from his mouth in a red arc. Any Corithian would have fallen from such a blow. Jake simply shook his head and smiled. He smiled. What is wrong with these creatures? Sylveth whispered. Her scales had turned pale, a sign of deep distress in her species. Nobody answered her. Nobody could. Jake responded with a kick that slammed into Danny's ribs. Vexillar heard bones crack through the speakers. The sound made several warriors flinch. Danny bent over in pain, but only for a moment. He grabbed Jake's leg before he could pull it back and twisted hard. Both humans fell to the ground, tangled together like fighting animals. What followed was somehow worse than the standing fight. On the ground, the humans became even more vicious. They wrapped their limbs around each other in impossible ways. They squeezed and twisted and bent joints in directions that should have caused permanent damage. Danny managed to get behind Jake and wrapped his arm around Jake's throat, cutting off his air. Jake's face turned red, then purple. His eyes bulged from the pressure. Any sane creature would have surrendered. Any sane creature would have tapped out to save their own life. Jake did not surrender. Instead, he used his remaining strength to twist his body in a way that should have been impossible. He escaped the choke and immediately drove his elbow into Danny's face. Blood exploded from Danny's nose. The human fell backward, his face now covered in red. The crowd went insane with joy. Thousands of humans jumped to their feet, screaming and cheering as if they were witnessing the greatest moment of their lives. "They celebrate this," Tarek Sol said quietly. "Men, women, even children." Vexillar could not respond. His mind was trying to process what he was seeing, but nothing made sense. The Corythians were warriors. They understood violence. They had built their entire civilization on combat and conquest, but they fought for survival, for territory, for resources. They fought because they had to. These humans were fighting for entertainment. The battle continued for what felt like hours, but was only 15 minutes according to the timer on the screen. Both humans were now barely recognizable. Danny's left eye had swollen completely shut. Jake was limping badly, suggesting damage to his knee or ankle. Both were covered in blood, sweat, and bruises. Neither stopped fighting. In the final minute, Jake caught Danny with a knee to the head. Danny stumbled, dazed and confused. Jake grabbed him from behind, wrapped his arms around Danny's neck, and squeezed. This time, there was no escape. Danny's body went limp, and the referee jumped in to stop the fight. Jake had won. The crowd exploded with noise. Jake raised his arms in victory, his face a mask of blood and bruises. He was smiling broadly, as if he had just received the greatest gift in the world. Then something happened that confused the Corythians even more. Danny woke up. Medical personnel helped him to his feet. He was unsteady, clearly injured, clearly in pain. But when he saw Jake, he did not attack. He did not show anger or hatred. Instead, he walked over to his opponent and embraced him like a brother. They hugged each other in the middle of the cage, surrounded by the blood they had both spilled. They spoke words to each other that the translators could not catch, but their body language was clear. There was no hatred between them. There was respect, admiration, perhaps even love. "I do not understand," Sylveth said. "They just tried to kill each other. How can they embrace afterward?" "Because to them, this was not war," Tarek Sol replied. "This was a game, a contest. They were not enemies. They were." He paused, searching for the right word. "Competitors." Mokhtar finally found his voice. "This is madness. No species does this to itself. No species treats violence as a game. Humans do," Vexillar said quietly. He had not moved since the fight began. His 4 eyes were still fixed on the screen, where Danny and Jake were now being interviewed by a human with a microphone. Both fighters were laughing, joking about the battle, as if it had been nothing more than a friendly conversation. "Find more," the commander ordered. "Find every form of human contest you can. I want to know everything about their competitions." "Commander, is that wise?" Tarek Sol asked. "What we have seen is already disturbing enough. That is exactly why we must know more. If this is how humans play, I need to understand how they fight." The intelligence officer bowed his head and returned to his station. Over the next several hours, he collected hundreds of recordings of human contests. Fighting, racing, throwing, jumping, swimming. The humans competed in everything. They had turned every physical activity into a competition, complete with rules, points, and audiences. But it was not just physical contests. They also competed with their minds. Strategy games, word games, games of chance and skill. They competed in cooking food, in creating art, in singing songs. Competition was woven into every part of their society, and all of it was voluntary. All of it was for enjoyment. When Tarek Sol presented his findings, the entire command staff gathered to watch. What they saw over the next several hours would change their understanding of the galaxy forever. Because if humans treated violence as entertainment, if they voluntarily put themselves through pain and suffering for fun, then they were not prey animals at all. They were something far more dangerous. They were predators who had grown so powerful that they no longer needed to hunt. And without prey to chase, they had turned on each other. Not out of hatred, but out of love. Love for the fight itself. Vexillar understood now why the Galactic Council had sent his best ship to observe these creatures. The Council was not curious about humans. The Council was afraid of them. For 7 days, the Corythian warship remained hidden behind Earth's moon. Inside, the crew worked without rest, collecting and analyzing every piece of human entertainment they could find. What they discovered kept them awake at night. Lieutenant Kiraven was assigned to study human endurance contests. She was a veteran of 30 combat missions. A warrior who had seen friends die in her arms without flinching. By the 2nd day of her research, she requested medical leave for emotional distress. "Commander, I cannot continue," she reported to Vexillar, her scales gray and trembling. "What these creatures do to themselves, it is beyond anything I have witnessed in war. Show me what you found." Vexillar ordered. Kiraven pulled up a recording of something called an ultramarathon. The video showed hundreds of humans running through a desert. The temperature on screen read over 40 degrees. The humans were sweating so much that their clothes were soaked through. Some were bleeding from their feet. Some were vomiting from exhaustion, and they kept running. "This race covers 100 miles, Kiraven explained, her voice shaking. "The humans run without stopping for over 20 hours. Some of them collapse and have to be carried away by medical teams. But most of them finish. And then..." She paused, struggling to continue. "And then they sign up to do it again." Why?" Sylveth asked. "Why would anyone choose to suffer like this?" "For fun," Kiraven said. "They call it fun." Tarek Sol had been researching human history, trying to understand where this madness came from. What he found was even more disturbing. "Commander, I have discovered why humans are such effective endurance runners," he reported. In their ancient past, before they developed weapons, humans hunted using a method called persistence hunting. They would chase an animal across the open land, not trying to catch it, but simply following it. Hour after hour, day after day, never stopping, never resting. "That is impossible," Mokhtar said. "No creature can outrun its prey." The humans did not outrun their prey. They outlasted it. You see, humans can sweat through their skin to cool their bodies. Most animals cannot. So the human would chase the animal until it overheated and collapsed from exhaustion. Then they would simply walk up to it and kill it. The bridge was silent as this information sank in. "They are persistence predators," Vexillar said slowly. "They do not need to be fast or strong. They simply never stop." "Exactly, Commander. And this trait has not faded over time. If anything, it has grown stronger. The humans now test their endurance against each other because they have no prey left to chase." The research continued. Every day brought new horrors. General Mokhtar studied human combat sports beyond the fighting they had already seen. He found something called rugby, where teams of humans crashed into each other at full speed, breaking bones and tearing muscles for possession of an oval ball. He found ice hockey, where humans on knife shoes attacked each other with sticks while sliding across frozen water. He found American football, where armored humans collided so violently that many suffered permanent brain damage. "They know it damages their minds," Mokhtar reported, his voice hollow. "They have studied the effects. They know that playing this sport will cause their brains to decay. They play anyway." Sylveth was assigned to study what humans called extreme sports. She lasted 3 days before she had to stop. "They jump out of flying machines for pleasure," she told the command staff. "They strap themselves to elastic ropes and leap from bridges. They climb mountains so tall that the air cannot be breathed, where temperatures freeze flesh in minutes. And when they reach the top," she shuddered, "they take photographs of themselves smiling." "Smiling," Vexillar repeated. "Yes, Commander. They smile when they face death. They smile when they conquer impossible challenges. They treat survival itself as a contest to be won." The youngest officer on the ship, a technician named Vorpak, had been assigned to study human children. He had thought it would be the easiest assignment. He was wrong. Human children are trained for competition from birth, he reported. They play games that simulate hunting and fighting. They race each other constantly. There is a game called dodgeball, where children throw projectiles at each other while trying to avoid being hit. Another called tag, where they chase each other in packs. They are conditioning their young to enjoy pursuit and combat. Even their educational system is competitive, Tarek Saul added. They rank their children against each other. They give rewards to those who perform better than others. Every aspect of human development involves competition. But the worst discovery was yet to come. Vexillar had assigned himself to study human military history. What he found made him want to turn his ship around and flee back to Corythian space. Humans had been fighting each other since before they could write. Every generation, every century, they found new reasons to wage war. Religion, territory, resources, ideology. The reasons changed, but the fighting never stopped. They had developed weapons of incredible destructive power, weapons that could vaporize entire cities in a single flash of light, and they had used them on themselves. They call them nuclear weapons, Vexillar told his staff, his voice barely a whisper. They created bombs so powerful that they could end all life on their planet. And instead of destroying these weapons in horror, they built more, thousands more. They pointed them at each other and waited. Why did they not destroy each other? Mukhtar asked. Because both sides knew they would die. They called it mutually assured destruction. They held their own extinction as a threat to prevent war. That is insane. No, Vexillar said, that is human. They live on the edge of annihilation by choice. They have the power to end themselves, and they use that power as a negotiating tool. What kind of species does this? The answer was becoming clear. Humans were not prey. They were not even predators in the traditional sense. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They were a species that had conquered every challenge their world could offer. They had killed every predator, survived every disaster, spread to every corner of their planet, and when there was nothing left to conquer, they turned inward. They made conquest into entertainment. They made war into a game. They made survival itself into a competition to see who could push themselves furthest, longest, hardest. On the 7th day, Vexillar called his entire command staff together. He stood before them with a heavy heart and a clear mind. The research was complete. The conclusion was undeniable. We cannot conquer these creatures, he announced. We must not even try. The war room of the Corythian warship was designed to inspire courage. Banners of conquered worlds hung from the walls. Weapons taken from defeated enemies lined the display cases. A massive table carved from the bones of a great beast dominated the center of the room. Here, the greatest warriors of the Corythian Empire had planned campaigns that changed the fate of star systems. Now, those same warriors sat in silence, struggling to process what they had learned. Vexillar stood at the head of the table, his 4 hands pressed flat against the ancient bone. He had not slept in 3 days. None of them had. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw humans smiling through blood and pain. You have all reviewed the research, he began. You have all seen what humans do to themselves, to each other, for entertainment. I have called this meeting to discuss our official recommendation to the Galactic Council. General Mokhtar was the first to speak. Despite his age, his voice was still strong, still full of warrior pride. Commander, I have served the Empire for over 80 years. I have fought against 17 different species. I have never, not once, recommended retreat. He paused, his old eyes troubled. But I find myself unable to recommend engagement with these humans. Explain your reasoning, Vexillar said, though he already knew the answer. We Corythians are warriors because we must be. Our ancestors fought to survive on a hostile world. When we developed space travel, we fought to secure resources for our people. Every battle we have ever waged has had a purpose, a goal. We fight when we must, and we stop when the objective is achieved. He pulled up a holographic recording of a human boxing match. Two humans stood in a ring, pounding each other's faces with padded fists. Blood sprayed with every hit. The crowd roared with excitement. These humans fight for no reason at all. They fight for points. For money. For the pleasure of strangers they will never meet. There is no purpose, no objective beyond the fight itself. Mokhtar shook his head slowly. A warrior who fights for survival can be understood. A warrior who fights for glory can be predicted. But a warrior who fights simply for the joy of fighting, that creature cannot be defeated. Because they have already won, simply by participating. Lieutenant Kiraven raised her hand to speak. Her scales had regained some color since her breakdown, but her eyes still carried shadows. I studied their endurance competitions, she said. I watched humans run until their feet bled, then keep running. I watched them swim across frozen channels that would kill us in minutes. I watched them climb mountains where the air itself becomes poison. She looked around the table at her fellow warriors. We train our soldiers to ignore pain. We teach them to push through injury in the heat of battle. But we do not ask them to seek out pain for pleasure. We do not ask them to hurt themselves for fun. The humans do not see it as hurting themselves, Tariq Saul interjected. They see it as testing themselves. Proving themselves. They have a saying that I found repeated across their culture. What does not kill you makes you stronger. Sylveth made a sound of distress. That is a threat. They are telling themselves that survival is just the beginning. That true strength comes from constantly approaching death and walking away. Yes, Tariq Saul agreed. And they believe it completely. Their entire species is built around this concept. From childhood games to military training to professional sports, every stage of human development involves deliberately facing challenges that could break them. Vexillar pulled up a new display. It showed the history of human warfare, a timeline stretching back thousands of years. Wars overlapped wars. Conflicts led to conflicts. The timeline was soaked in blood. In the past 10,000 years, he said quietly, humans have not experienced a single generation without major warfare. Not one. Every few decades, they find a new reason to fight each other on a massive scale. Millions die. Cities are destroyed. Entire regions are devastated. He zoomed in on the modern era, and yet their population continues to grow. Their technology continues to advance. They have not destroyed themselves despite having the power to do so, many times over. They wage war constantly, but they also constantly recover, rebuild, and prepare for the next war. They are practicing, Mokhtar said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. His old face had gone pale. Stars above. They are practicing. All of it. The sports. The contests. The wars with each other. They are keeping themselves sharp, ready, trained for a threat that has not yet appeared. The realization spread through the room like a cold wind. They do not know about other species in the galaxy, Sylveth said slowly. They have been alone on their world, fighting only each other. And yet they act as if they are preparing for something greater. It is instinct, Kiravan suggested. Perhaps they can sense that the universe is dangerous, that someday they will face a real enemy. So they train against the only opponents available. Themselves. Quote, Vexillar nodded grimly. And in doing so, they have created the most combat-ready species the galaxy has ever seen. Not because they have natural weapons or armor, but because they have made fighting into a way of life. Every human is a soldier in some way. Every human has experienced competition, conflict, struggle. It is built into their very culture. Grodov Tuar. He closed the display and looked at his officers one by one. If we invaded their world, every human would fight. Not just their military, but their athletes, their workers, their children. They would see it as the ultimate contest, the greatest competition their species has ever faced. His voice dropped lower. And they would enjoy it. Number, I'm on a sly. Number 44. And they would enjoy it. Even if they lost? Sylveth asked. Especially if they lost. Remember what we saw in their fighting contests. The losers did not show shame or despair. They showed respect for their opponents and determination to try again. If we defeated them once, they would come back stronger. If we defeated them twice, they would adapt and improve. They would never stop. They cannot stop. Competition is not something they do. It is something they are. Mokhtar stood slowly, his joints cracking with age. He walked to the window and stared out at the blue planet below. In 80 years of war, he said, I have learned to recognize when a battle cannot be won. Not through weakness, but through wisdom. He turned back to face the room. I officially recommend that the Corythian Empire never engage the human species in military conflict. One by one, every officer in the room voiced their agreement. Vexillar recorded the unanimous decision. Tomorrow, he would send their recommendation to the Galactic Council. For the first time in Corythian history, they would advise peace not from a position of weakness, but from a position of fear. The humans called their violent games contests. The Corythians called them warnings. The message from the Galactic Council arrived 3 weeks after Vexillar sent his report. He read it alone in his quarters, his 4 hands trembling slightly as he held the communication device. The Council had accepted every recommendation. Humans were classified as a Death World species, one of only 7 such classifications in galactic history. Their threat level was marked as extreme, and most importantly, all member species of the Galactic Council were forbidden from engaging humans in military conflict without unanimous approval from the entire governing body. But there was one more instruction. The Council wanted official first contact with the human species, and they wanted Vexillar to lead the delegation. The commander sat in the darkness of his quarters for a long time, thinking about what this meant. He had conquered 11 star systems. He had faced enemies that would give most warriors nightmares. None of that had prepared him for the simple act of meeting humans face to face. Still, orders were orders. And perhaps, he told himself, meeting the humans in person would help him understand them better. Perhaps seeing them up close would make them less terrifying. He was wrong. The landing took place in a human city called Geneva, on a continent called Europe. The humans had prepared a grand ceremony for the occasion. Thousands of them lined the streets, held back by barriers and security personnel. They were cheering. Vexillar descended from his shuttle with a team of 6 warriors, all carefully selected for their ability to remain calm under pressure. As his feet touched human soil for the first time, he was met by 2 humans who would serve as their official contacts. The first was a male named Greg Marshall. He was of average height for a human, with brown hair that was starting to turn gray and lines around his eyes that suggested frequent smiling. He wore formal human clothing and carried himself with easy confidence. The second was a female named Laura Bishop. She was shorter than her companion, with dark hair pulled back from her face and sharp, intelligent eyes. She moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who was used to being in control. Commander Vexillar, Greg said, extending his right hand in the human greeting gesture. On behalf of all of Earth, welcome to our planet. We are incredibly honored to meet you. Vexillar had studied human customs. He knew that the extended hand was meant to be grasped briefly, a sign of peace and friendship. But looking at that hand, he could not stop thinking about all the things human hands had done. All the punches thrown, all the weights lifted, all the competitors crushed. He grasped the hand anyway. Greg's grip was firm, confident, and mercifully brief. Thank you for receiving us, Vexillar managed. The Galactic Council extends its greetings to the human species. Fantastic, fantastic, Greg said with a warm smile. We've got a whole program planned for you. Diplomatic meetings, cultural exchanges, tours of our major cities. But first, we thought we'd give you something special. A real human experience. Behind him, Sylveth made a small sound of alarm. Laura noticed and tilted her head curiously. Is everything all right? She asked. Yes, Vexillar said quickly. We are simply eager to learn about your culture. Then you're in luck, Greg continued enthusiastically. There's a major sporting event happening this week. The World Cup Finals. Over 1 billion people are going to be watching. We've got VIP seats reserved just for your delegation. Sporting event. Vexillar repeated carefully. You mean a contest? Exactly. Soccer, football, really, depending on where you're from. 2 teams, 1 ball. 90 minutes of pure excitement. Greg's eyes lit up with genuine joy. It's going to be amazing. Brazil versus Germany. These 2 countries have a real rivalry going back decades. Rivalry, Mukhtar whispered from behind Vexillar. Laura stepped forward, her expression friendly but professional. Don't worry, it's not violent. Well, not very violent anyway. The players tackle each other sometimes, and there's the occasional broken bone, but nothing too serious. She paused. Unless you count what the fans do to each other in the stands. Quote, the fans, Sylveth said weakly. Oh, it's all in good fun. Greg assured them. Sure. Sometimes things get a little heated. Riots, car fires, that sort of thing. But mostly it's just passionate people showing support for their teams. Vexillar felt his heart's racing. This was supposed to be a peaceful introduction to human culture. Instead, they were being invited to witness another contest, another display of human competitive madness. We would be honored to attend, he said, because there was nothing else he could say. The following days were a blur of meetings, ceremonies, and cultural events. Everywhere the Corinthians went, they saw evidence of human competition. Business people competing for contracts, politicians competing for votes. Even the artists and musicians competed for attention and recognition. And then came the football match. The stadium held nearly 100,000 humans. They were painted in the colors of their chosen teams, waving flags and singing songs and making more noise than Vexillar had ever heard in his life. When the players took the field, the cheering became so loud that it hurt his ears. For 90 minutes, Vexillar watched humans chase a ball across a grass field. They kicked it, headed it, dove for it. They collided with each other at full speed. They argued with referees and taunted their opponents, and celebrated every small victory with unbridled joy. When the game ended, the winning team collapsed on the field in exhaustion and happiness. Some were crying. Some were laughing. Some were doing both at the same time. Their fans flooded onto the streets outside, celebrating with strangers as if they were family. Beautiful, isn't it? Greg said, appearing beside Vexillar in the VIP box. The passion, the drama, the pure human spirit. There's nothing else quite like it in the universe. Vexillar looked at the human diplomat. Greg was smiling broadly, his eyes bright with emotion. He had no idea how terrifying his species was. To him, this was just normal. This was just how humans lived. It is impressive, Vexillar admitted. Wait until the Olympics, Laura added from his other side. That's when things really get interesting. Every country sends their best athletes to compete in dozens of different events. Swimming, running, fighting, throwing things. It's a celebration of human achievement. You should come back for it, Greg suggested. Bring more of your people. Let them see what we're capable of. What they were capable of. Vexillar thought about that phrase for a long time. Humans used it to describe their athletic achievements, their artistic expressions, their peaceful competitions, but he knew the truth. He had seen what humans were capable of in their fighting rings, on their battlefields, in their endless struggle against themselves and their world. Their capability was not limited to sport. It was a bottomless well of determination, endurance, and sheer refusal to surrender. We will certainly consider it, Vexillar said diplomatically. Months later, when he returned to Corinthian space, he filed his final report on the human species. His recommendation was simple and clear. The Corinthians should pursue friendly relations with humanity. They should trade with them, learn from them, and most importantly, stay on their good side. Because if humans ever decided to turn their competitive spirit outward, toward the stars, toward other species, there would be nothing in the galaxy that could stop them. The humans called their activities games and sports and contests. The Corinthians knew them for what they really were. Training for the day when the rest of the universe would become their competition. And the Corinthians had no intention of being on the opposing team.